Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mask out this snail nicely. I'd recommend watching me do this because you've paid for it, and this is part of what you're paying for. If you feel as though you got it, you're in a time crunch, you could skip this video on to the next one. I won't be any the wiser. It's just going to be more masking techniques. Personally, I would watch them. If you feel like you need to answer some text messages or something at this time, now might be the time to do it. I normally discourage people from reading while they're watching my videos because, well, you know, that's very distracting. But this is just kind of going to be a repeat of some things we covered earlier. I'm just going to make a new window so that I can move this new window down to my Cintiq. And at my Cintiq, I will be able to use my touch screen. Cintiqs are amazing tools for people doing graphic design, doing art, any of those things. They can also be quite expensive, but you can find them on eBay sometimes pretty cheap. This particular one that I have is one of the smaller ones. And I got it for about the $500 mark, which is about the cost of 2 textbooks. So if you're, if you're thinking, what would be a good investment that costs 2 textbooks, I would recommend a Cintiq. On the other hand, they're always making new ones. They're always getting cheaper. Holding off until you really need one's absolutely fine too. I've known artists, or followed artists who used a mouse for the first 8 years of their career, and they did absolutely fine. So, you know, it's not a requirement. It's not a necessity. It's just something that makes your life easier. Okay, all of that spiel out of the way. And don't feel bad if you can't afford one. Like I said, some great artists have done amazing things with just a mouse. And there are things you can do with scanners as well. That said, I've already did the initial cutout and the new mask. I've created multiple backdrops so that I can see how this will look as I mask this out. And I'm just going to, I think I'll just paint in the mask. So I'm going to select the little snail, and I'm going to go ahead and with my, let's see, how do I want to do this? There are a million ways. Let's see how it handles with a quick selection tool. So on the snail itself, notice I'm clicking on the left side here, not on the mask, and notice that on the channels, the mask is not active, it's the RGB. I'm going to go ahead and just try dragging down. Oh, it looks like a pretty solid start. So I'll go ahead and drag around. Oh, looks like it's doing a good job to me. You always want to check this. It usually doesn't work particularly well. Whoa, a little too far, Control Z. It usually doesn't work particularly well. Sometimes, though, it's exactly what you need, so you never know. Now I'm going to click on the mask. I'm going to fill this mask using Alt-Delete to fill it with the with the foreground color of black. And I'm going to take a closer look. It's clean enough for what we're doing. So in some cases, you'll want it even cleaner. And even cleaner. Control D to deselect. And in those cases, you'll want to use different tools, maybe the brush, maybe those kinds of things. I'm going to go ahead and use the Magnetic Lasso tool. And I'm just going to drag down. Well, if it pivots, I'm going to go ahead and skip over. Whoops. Or, maybe I'll hit the wrong key command. Whoa, whoops, maybe I'll go a little bit off. Let me pause this video for just a second while I get my mouse back off the floor here. I'll be with... Okay, mouse back in hand. Let's try this one more time. I'm just using the space bar to move the mouse around. So a couple tips about the Magnetic Lasso tool. Let's say things are going pretty well because... And I've noticed I'm not holding down the mouse. I just click once to go through. You guys have probably used this tool a few times. Where there's a point of high contrast, it can handle it fine, but if it pivots in because the contrast is about the same, you can do a few things to fix that. On PCs, the backspace key, on Macs, I want to say that's the delete key, you can remove your previous anchor points. Notice that now I have fewer of them, and then you could go through. If it's having a difficulty all across the image, sometimes you could just click to add anchor points where you want. Other things you can do is press the caps lock key, and you'll see that you get like this weird brush. And like with all brushes in Photoshop, using the square brackets left and right will increase and decrease it. This is where it's detecting the threshold line. So if you shrink this down, turn off caps locks, notice it's handling the lighter images better. If in some cases you'll need to do the opposite of that, you'll press caps locks and then you can increase that with the right bracket key. Boom, you'll be able to go in. Again, I'm holding spacebar. I'm just going to move this up so that I can get back in the screen. Turn off caps locks, and I could go in. You can also go freeform on this thing if you want to switch temporarily over to the standard lasso tool. I want to say it's the Alt key, no, Control key. It's no, not that one. Hold on. No, maybe you can't anymore. Shift, Alt, Option. It used to be the Alt key. That was the Option key on the Macintosh. If you held that down, you would temporarily switch over to a standard lasso tool. But it looks as though they got rid of that, so I'm kind of bummed. If you guys remember what that is, I'm just going to press backspace a lot to go back there. If you guys remember what the secret is, feel free to let me know in the comments or the forums. We'll go on from there. Could have sworn it was the Alt key. I'll have to look that one up. So I'm going to click to add an anchor point and click a couple more times. When I double click, it will close the path. Boom. Make sure now that I've got the mask selected and I'm going to fill it. Kaboom. Bam. And look how much cleaner that is. Let me come along to the other side, do the same thing. I can, in the current version of Photoshop, work on the mask and it will be smart enough to go across and actually use the original image by default. I'm just pivoted in. On older versions of Photoshop that you may not be so lucky. And you'll want to make sure that you click on the layer itself rather than the mask. All right, double click to close that. And let me fill this in. Alt delete, Control D to deselect. Same process. Ooh, look how clean that is. Actually, this looks like it's a good candidate for the wand. Let's go ahead and swing out. Double click to select it or to close the selection. Alt delete to fill it, Control D to deselect. Let's go ahead and grab the quick selection tool. I'm going to use the bracket key. Whoops, sorry, the bracket key. That's the backslash key. That will show you the mask going in red, but we don't really need to do that in this case. I'm going to use the bracket key, boom, 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 to increase it. I'm sorry, no, it goes into quick mask mode. Doesn't it? Bracket key? Or is that Control? Q, it's quick mask mode. Yeah, so no, the bracket, the backslash key does the does show the mask. Okay, they change these sometimes, and so I get a little confused as to where it is. You'll hear me doddering on about, well, wait, is that really how it goes? Whoops, and it often is. So this messed up right in here. I'm going to shrink the brush with the left bracket key. I'm going to hold down the Alt key and just go across. That looks pretty good. I want to get in on that little corner. Grab the Magnetic Lasso tool, hold down Shift before I start. Notice I'll change it over to the Add to the selection. And then click. Click myself. There we go. And Alt to subtract. I'm going to bring that back in because it pivoted in a little bit. All right, that looks pretty good. Alt Delete to fill the mask with some black. Control D to deselect. I think you know what you're going to hear me say a million more times. So it gets a little tricky in here. I don't like how it did that. I'm going to backspace. Just click. Oops. Backspace. Click. 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 All right. Looks good enough for there. And then close it by double clicking, Alt Delete, Control Deselect. All right, so let's say that you start getting into an area where there isn't an easy delineation. You have to make some decisions. Do you want to have this something soft, or do you want to have this as a hard line? Let's see what it will look like either way. I'm going to go ahead and just take the brush tool B. I'm going to move my mouse down to the Cintiq, so you're not going to see where the brush is. Sorry about that. But you'll see the result as I just paint in. So I'm just going to start with a hard brush, and we'll see how that looks. I'm going to undo because I don't like how it cut in like that. And I think that's looking, I think hard brush is looking pretty good. So I'm going to stick with that and just quickly paint all of this out. And this is a nice time to have gray, because notice if I have like a little speck in here, let me make a little speck. If I have a little speck right here, I can see it way more easily than if this was on black. So let me go ahead and just paint this in. And hit X to get the white, paint that little blob back. Okay, I think you guys are getting the idea. So you could spend quite a lot of time doing this, so that's fine. Do keep track, though, of how much time you have before you got to turn it in, because if you have a limited amount of time to work on this, which most of us do, you're going to want to have a completed piece rather than an incomplete piece with 3 perfect things. You want or like 1 or 2 perfect things. You need like 5 things. Go for the 5 things. Any job worth doing is worth doing wrong. Go ahead and just get it, get it as close as you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to kind of cover it. I probably shouldn't be telling you guys that. I should be saying things like, reach for the stars and whatever, and it'll be okay. So I've flown off screen. I just noticed that. Sorry about that, guys. Let me go ahead and zoom out a little bit. See that I've got that going on. Let me zoom in a little more. And let's try the Magnetic Lasso tool, shall we? This could be a good place for it. Clicky, clicky. Oh, yeah. And I'll click there, click there, click there. It's doing a pretty decent job. Click there, click there. All right, and pull out, swing around, double click, Alt-Delete to fill, Control D to deselect, not Control X. I think that this is a little rough, so I'm going to come in with the brush. I'm going to fix that up. So B for the brush tool, and again, I'll be down on the Cintiq. Sorry about that. Let me just touch this up a little bit, cut in a little hard. So since it's so blurry, I'm actually going to take the brush and I'm going to make it not as hard. And so I'm going to hold down the Alt key, and with the right mouse, not the left, I'm going to drag left and right to increase and decrease, up and down to left and right to increase and decrease the size, up and down to increase and decrease the hardness. And I'm going to get a nice fuzzy amount that I want. And now when I paint that in, you can see how it's feathered. And that feathered approach will work better with the blurry bit of the photo, because if you have a blurry photo, you don't want a hard mask. It's going to look fake. You want something nice and soft. So another way you could do this is make a selection and then go to select feather, and that would allow you to make a nice soft selection. But I'm just going to come around the tail a little bit. And here's another tricky bit. How far do you want to go in to remove the color? I'm going to dig in about that far. I know that the snail isn't going to be very big on the overall scheme of things, so it'll be okay to have a little bit of color. But I only know that for this one. If you decide to come back later, if you have a little bit of time, and touch up your masks on the single images so you can reuse them, more power for you, more power to you. Zoom out. You can see that there's a little bit of a green glow. And so that's a good point to do decontaminate color, but also that's a destructive change, so I'm going to hold off on that for now. Now's a good time to save, though, so I'm going to Control S, and I'm going to come into my Greetings from MJC folder, and I'm going to make a new folder, and I'm going to call this Resources. And I'm going to call this Snail with Mask. Cool, and we'll tell it OK. And we'll come in, grab the brush tool again, and I still have the exact same settings as before. Just got to be really soft around the edge here. And you can see that part of the snail shell just slowly fade away. We'll get that. And so you're going, cool, yeah, that's great, but how do you do that without a Cintiq? So let me go ahead and show you how you do it without a Cintiq. You come in, you zoom in a lot, and then you take the brush tool, and then you do it slowly with your mouse. That's all. It's just faster for me to use it with the Cintiq. It's not necessary for me to use it with the Cintiq. And the reason why I want it to be a little bit faster is that I know you guys are sitting here watching these videos for like all day, and you're going, oh man, I got trigger homework I got to be working on. Come on, hurry it up. So by using the Cintiq, I can oblige and get that in. Beautiful. Okay, so we're getting into the territory where we need a hard mask again because we can see the focus. Keep in mind there are more masking tools I haven't shown you that would work really well on this as well, but I want to keep it a little bit simple at this point in the semester. We'll get into the more advanced stuff a little bit later when we start applying textures to things instead of just as a flat texture, actually having it wrap around. There are a lot of masking techniques will do that. That'll be a lot of fun. For me, at least. I think you guys will enjoy it, too. It's a pretty important thing. Masks, I've used these all throughout my career. It's just back when I was doing this for a living, masks were kind of the requirement for anything that you were going to do. Let me zoom out a little bit. Now's another good time to use the Magnetic Lasso tool. I'm going to go ahead and click right in there. I'm just going to click right on it. Boom. Oh, look at that. It can tell perfectly what I am up to. Again, if I needed to see how it was doing things, caps lock's key to see the where it's detecting those edges, those threshold edges. I can left and right bracket to increase or decrease that. Caps lock's key to hide that so I can actually see what I'm doing. And if I miss, I can use the backspace key, that's delete on the Macintosh, to go back. I'm going to go out a little bit here, and then I'll just correct it on my way back in. I'll be a little softer. Oh, look at that. Look at it grab that. I do love that. Okay. Boom. So I'm just going to cut around, double click, Alt delete to fill with the foreground color, which is black on the mask. Whoops. Control D, keep hitting Control X. We can see it's a little rough, not a problem. So we have all those edge detections that we have inside the selected mask, but I don't feel as though I need those right now. I think that the brush would work just fine. Hold down the Alt key and right click. I'm going to just increase it real quick and then drag down so I can see the hardness. And then drag that down and zoom in a lot more. I'm going to take my brush again, boom. I'm just going to touch it gently. And if I need a straight line, I'll hold down Shift and click, and that will always create that straight line between the 2 points that I clicked. All right, so time for a soft brush. I'm just going to right click real quick and drop the hardness down, and then I will increase it. As you can see, there's a million ways to mask a snail inside of Photoshop. I'm going to go ahead and increase the brush size with the bracket key a little bit. Here we go. Dig in just enough. Okay, and if you're on a laptop, get a mouse. Don't use the trackpad for this stuff. It will drive you crazy. The mice at Target are like $12. I don't have a required textbook for this class. Spend the money that you would have spent on a textbook on a $12 mouse instead. Please, like, don't use the trackpad. It will make your life miserable if you use the trackpad. Alt-delete, Control-D. If you got a friend who is a gamer and they're complaining about their mouse, maybe encourage them to buy a new mouse and give them their old one. You never know. Maybe it'll work. You never know. It's worth a shot. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure the hardness is still nice and low, increase the size of this thing, and I'm just going to shift-click to get a nice feathered feel around the eye stalk of this snail. And then we've got this point, so I'm just going to dig in quite a bit. So it's mostly lens flare. Oh, look how good that is looking. Whoops. Sorry about that. I held down the Shift key when I was clicking. So I tried to make a point. Now I'll hold down the Shift. Click. Oh, look at that snail. Click. Shift click. All right. Okay, except for the color contamination, this looks like a pretty solid job. I'm going to go ahead and save what I have. You check it across the board. That's on gray. It's on black. You can see the color contamination a little bit better on that. It's on the white. I think this is a good-looking mask. If it goes on something dark, I think it's going to hold out pretty well. Just watch out for the color contamination, a little fringe. Otherwise, you're set. So that is 20 minutes of masking a snail, but it also had some useful lasso tool functionality. I'm going to go ahead and close up the snail. We'll use him in a minute, and we will move on to another image to mask. See you next video.